Hey, thanks, Admiral. My name is Carl Forsling. I'm from the Airbus US Space and Defense. And you might be asking, why is Airbus sponsoring a naval aviation panel? Since there's no Airbus products currently out there. And I sort of go back to when I was a CH-46 pilot becoming a V-22 pilot. And now platforms are a little different now than they are then. Back then it was, hey, we're going to do the same thing, but twice as fast. And that's what we thought it was going to be. And it turns out there's so much more going on there. That a V-22 plus another system is a capability instead of a platform. And going to a capability-based system, vice platform-centric system, we're not just replacing one thing with another thing, but one thing that does more than one mission, or one mission is done by a combination of different things, is really where we're going. And Airbus is part of that. Other companies are part of that. And new technologies, the MBSE, digital twin, open architecture, all those things contribute to being able to do that. So hopefully this panel is going to talk about that way, and a lot of the other things going on in naval aviation. But that being said, the reason you're here is these guys. So I'll just pass it off to Admiral Courtney. He told me to keep it short, so I will.
You making fun of me again?
Just a little.
Okay. Fair. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good comeback. I got to give him that.
But suffice to say, the Admiral's commanded at every level of command in the Navy. More importantly, he's got over 5,000 hours and 1,000 traps, which I think speaks for itself.
1265.
Just a little bit more than 1,000.
Yeah.
That being said, hand you off to Admiral. I hope, thanks for your help, and thanks for letting us be here.
Appreciate it, shipmate. Appreciate it. Big round of applause for him, please. Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight, this afternoon, for this august group. We have with us both active duty and industry requirements and people that are lucky enough, companies that are lucky enough to deliver the great capability of the Navy and Marine Corps and of the Coast Guard. On my left is Lieutenant General Brad Gehring, Deputy Commandant for Aviation, United States Marine Corps, longtime Harrier attack pilot, extensive command level at all levels in the Marine Corps, a lot of joint experience, and he's back into the building. Welcome, shipmate. How long have you been in the job now?
About 4.5 weeks.
4.5 weeks, so yeah. Once you learn how to swim, it's easy once you cut yourself out of the burlap sack. To his left, Mike Donnelly, Director Air Warfare, N98, Tomcat, the Super Hornet NFO, Squadron Command, Carrier Strike Group. Welcome back to DC. Been in the ready room before. Thanks. To his left is Nasty Manazar, Vice President, Navy Systems GovOps at Boeing, retired 2-star. Also Tomcat, the Carrier Strike Group Command, joined Boeing after retiring as N98 and the acting N9. Welcome back there, Nasty. Sure. And then Bu Durart, Director of EW Programs and Pursuits of BAE Systems, Abu. Extensive background on the panel topic as a retired naval aviator and electronic warfare expert. And he found out at 5:30 this morning he's on this panel. So be prepared to ask him some really tough questions, please. Yeah. Now I'm going to lead off with a few teaser questions to give the panel to answer the questions, and then we're going to open up to the floor to your questions. And so please, there'll only be a short period of time, and then you'll have your opportunity to take a swing at this august panel. Now, I'm going to deviate from the script. If you read your program, it's about future aviation platform development, and I want to expand that a bit. Too many people would think that aviation platform is a single type model series of an aircraft type. And I think that's a mistake. It's too limiting. Both the Navy and Marine Corps fly their platforms from sea bases, floating sea bases, and I think it's appropriate to expand the discussion to include the total picture of the aviation platform, the warfighting system. Now, there's a lot of critics out there that use their mantra that the threats to the survivability of the platforms no longer make them relevant. These critics ignore the even greater threats to shore-based airfields and bases that all of the Joint Force requires to deter conflict and win in combat. And it makes me think that the rhetoric against these floating sea bases, these 100,000 tons of sovereign American territory, it's really a chase for dollars, and it's not an honest, open, fact-based discussion on the merits of what these terrific platforms, the weapon system, brings to our nation. One only needs to fully understand the political and military capability the strike groups, carrier, and amphibious bring to our national leadership and to the Joint Force. They can sail anywhere within 12 nautical miles of a coastline because they bring both political and physical access to the decision makers. And why do we call both access both political and physical? The National Command Authority only has to say when and where they want these forward deployed forces that are already forward deployed to sail into a time of crisis, not needing to ask permission for anybody's support, another nation's support for either political or physical overflight or physical basing. No other part of the Joint Force provides the same capability, bringing credible combat power, full spectrum combat power capability to the crisis to make the other guy blink, or if needed, to apply the violent business end of National Command Authority policy, and concurrently creating the conditions to bring the follow-on Joint Force. Now, some of the critics say we're expensive, and I'm here to tell you we are, and that's because it's waterfront property, and anybody ever buy cheap waterfront property? I don't think so, and I defy you to find it. So for both Buzz and Gilla, how do you see the support from both of your cockpits? Over to you, sir.
As far as the comment you just made, sir, as far as, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, when we traded an email on this, I mean, I think at the end of the day, and when people talk about being expensive and cost, you know, I like to think of it as winning is expensive, and I think losing is even more costly, right? Particularly when you consider the pure threat that we're up against. So it's going to require investment and resources to compete with, particularly the PRC and others. So it is expensive, but that's the cost of winning.
Okay.
And when you look at the very wide utility that we have, particularly for carrier strike group perspective across all phases of operation, from peacetime and competition to high-end conflict, there's really nothing as agile or as instilling faith and understanding U.S. resolve as a carrier strike group amongst our partners and allies and bolstering their positions, particularly in competition phase. We certainly focus on what it does for deterrence, but that alliance assurance, I think, is as important and is a realistic return that a strike group provides. And as you pointed out, it is really the package that comes with the multi-domain capability. When we talk about seabed to space, it is the package. It's the most elemental way that we fight from an integrated naval force, as well as integrating into the joint force. And it's highly agile and adaptable. When Enterprise CVN 65 retired after 50 years of service, she was as lethal then as she was the day she went into the water, and Nimitz will be the same, and our Ford class will be the same well into the 21st century.
Nasty, you got any supporting fires?
Yeah, I did want to comment on a couple things. First of all, I came up here and made sure my chair had 4 legs as Airbus introduced me. And then I made sure my mic worked, and that's all good. And then I noticed here that here's industry and there's DOD. Interesting, I should just swap with Buzz, so we're sitting in the middle. You know, we provide the platforms in industry that the DOD services need and our international partners need to provide a capability. And oftentimes, I will tell you that a lot of our analysis talks about capabilities. And we think about the capabilities from a platform perspective, but Admiral, when you brought it out that we're looking from a flight deck perspective, from a larger capability, I think that there can be more discussion with, hey, how are you guys thinking about sort of this whole war fight? We, of course, do our own, all the companies in here do our own analysis. The P-8, for example, thanks to Congress, they bought the program of record this year, went to 138. That's great. I think that the threat right now on the left and the right probably means there's probably a need for more of those. And so as we learn how the services are thinking about upcoming conflict in all phases, to the point about the carrier strike group, to our amphibious strike groups, the surrounding capabilities, what are those broader capabilities that we as industry can bring, and the partnership that can come from a shared view of that future?
Abu?
Yeah, I guess I would add survivability. I think a lot of the detractors of the carrier say, we'll focus on the biggest, baddest threat out there at range, and the carrier is never going to survive and live to harness the investment. And I would say you have to look at the kill chain. You have to break down the different steps that it would take for them to be successful, and you attack each of those areas, whether it's kinetics or non-kinetics. And we've got a very robust defense from the air, on the surface, subsurface, to protect that strike group and to project power, which is what it's all about. So it's not as bad as it could be once you break down the problem.
Yeah, and I'd like to add a couple things to that. Is first off, both from the carrier and from the amphibious ready group, they bring a tactical level staff that closes the seam between the operational and the tactical. And you know, you're not going to command a fight, the tactical fight at the 3-star level. You're going to need that tactical level staff that the CSG and the Air commanders are able to bring to the fight for that full domain combat capability. And I'd also like to emphasize the number of fires that both strike groups are able to generate within a 24 repeatable hour cycle. And no other capability can do that as quickly. All right, thank you. Now, both for the two in uniform, given OSD's policy guidance and Congress's power to hold the purse strings, how do you both 98 and DCA define the Navy and Marine aviation requirements? How do you prioritize those requirements and then convince both CNO and CMC to fund those requirements?
Okay, sir, for us, for requirements for the Marine Corps, I mean, it really starts with guidance and priorities that we get from the Commandant. And he recently released a FRAGO last week that kind of talked about how we fight, which kind of gets at his guidance. So I'm not going to take you through the entire FRAGO, but it really forms the basis for all of our requirements. And, you know, we are the expeditionary force in readiness. We have to be able to respond to crisis today, anywhere, anytime. We have to be able to project power from the sea to land with combined arms, with MAGTAS, Marine Air Ground Task Forces. But in the future operating environment, we also have to be able to project firepower from land to sea. And this is really the operating environment that we think we'll be in as part of what we call the stand-in force. And that's a distributed force living inside a peer adversary's weapon engagement zone in a distributed manner. So that really informs a lot of how we have to equip ourselves with capabilities. And some of the things we're looking into now are things like lower cost, think capacity, things like loitering munitions, things like intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and targeting capabilities, things like collaborative combat aircraft to augment our F-35 force. So those are the types of things that we kind of capture in his guidance, and then from there we go to his priorities, of which he's listed 5. And part of that is balancing crisis response with modernization, and we could probably talk more about that. Another is naval integration and organic mobility. And we talk about quality of life initiatives as a priority. We talk about recruiting, training, and retaining Marines. And then he talks about maximizing the use of our reserves and the capability of our reserves. So anyway, we take that guidance, and then what we do is we put it into requirements. And where we publish the requirements is in basically our campaign plan for aviation, which is something called Project Eagle. And what's unique about Project Eagle is it doesn't look over a single future year defense plan or fit up. It looks over the next 3. So it looks out 15 years, and basically probably the most useful part of this for somebody that would be interested in what our requirements are is we list out a roadmap based on capability. And each roadmap takes from an existing platform to, it could be upgrading that platform, or it could be one day replacing that platform. And we start with TAC Air, so we start with F-35. And then from there, we get into our unmanned portfolio, which looks at, you know, medium altitude, long endurance, and where we're going to go with that in the future. We look at collaborative combat aircraft, that type of capability to augment our force. We look into our current assault support capability, the V-22, and where we're going to take that over the next 15 years. And then we also look at other things like, you know, advanced tilt rotor strike. We go through our KC-130, and then we go through our air command and control and aviation ground support. So each one of those areas has a roadmap that you can see out to the next 3 fit up. And it's a combination of upgrading some of the stuff we have and then potentially replacing it going forward. So that's how we articulate the requirements. To your last point, sir, as far as convincing the Commandant on what to buy, not to buy, no convincing required. It's his guidance, it's his priority, and we're 100% aligned with that.
Okay, Buzz?
Very much the same, sure. The alignment with strategic documents, the environment we're going to operate in, the concept of operations from our fleet commanders and the COCOMs, and identifies via capabilities-based assessment where we have gaps or opportunities that we look to fill. And I think the important thing, and just the difference of when I had been in N88 and N98 in the past, where we'd look more linear at specific platforms as solutions, it's understanding how that fits into the system, the Navy integrated capability as well as the joint force, and the synergy that we get between those different solutions. There's no one thing that is going to solve the problem in today's fight. And then putting that together in demonstration, quantifiably database in the value that it brings to the joint fight. And what we have to do as a naval force, as we look at integrated maritime capability, is the reliance that our national defense policy has on us operating in peacetime and competition. So that's the wholeness and capability and readiness that we need today, and in balance with what opportunities we have for modernization for the future force. And that's probably one of our bigger challenges because of the day job that we have. We have to balance that as real. And with CNO's focus on warfighting, warfighters, and foundation, that's the wholeness of the fleet. That's so that when she talks about players on the field, that we are credible and capable if we have to fight tonight, as well as looking ahead into the future.
From industry's perspective, how they doing?
The thing I want to just point out is, again, reflecting on the requirements piece. If we knew where you're going, we can deploy company money, right? So with the budget fluctuations that are from various reasons or top line movements or priorities moving somewhere else, this room right here together, the defense industrial base, if you want, hey, we're going to move that direction, things like unfunded priority lists, unfunded requirements lists, those are good at telling Congress where you're going, but also some more negotiation and conversation about where you're trying to go, and we can deploy company money to that spot while you were getting the priorities ready. And we partner with folks. We can use study money. We can reach out a little ways. We can study something. But deploying industry money would help to cover some of those bumps on the road from a resourcing standpoint, because it's so difficult sometimes to fund all the priorities that the Navy and Marine Corps are looking for.
Yeah, I think it's gotten better. I think involving industry and the requirements, trade space exploration is absolutely the way to go. As you wonder, well, what can you give me? Well, how much money do you have? Well, how long does it take? When do you need it? And that loop of modeling and study to inform what is the art of the possible. So when you put out the RFP, you've got the confidence that you've got something you can afford on a schedule you need, and we understand there's going to be peaks and valleys and trades, but being involved from day one to help, let you know, what is the most capable system for your dollars and time available is what we all need.
I think this is one of the key challenges we have to make sure we have our head around as we go forward. Because as the pace of change accelerates, both for our opportunities and for the environment we operate with the threat, recognize that the changing requirements are not useful. Breaking the paradigm of and the mindset of our traditional acquisition approach and taking a venture capitalist solution for a disruptive capability and turning that into a 7 or 9 year acquisition program is not the pace that we can operate. So that we definitely need to continue to have a very transparent, I think, conversation and understanding of the requirements development so that we have a good anchor point going forward between both the military and industry.
Now, I want to underline something Bo just said. We get into this technical conversation. Sometimes the lawyers get in the way and they're going, hey, you can't talk to industry right now. You're thinking about an RFP. We need to talk more. We need to be able to discuss. The requirements can move. We can tell you what's unobtainium and what's not. We can tell you what's at the edge of the TRL and MRL levels and where we can go to deploy the money. We can think, we could put money against something, a little money here, a little money there. You can grab a whole bunch of us in the room, put us in the same room. We all write NDAs and PIAs and go after a capability. All that's being done. When I left the five-sided wind tunnel and went across 395, I observed this opaque curtain went down across 395. And we're looking back at the Pentagon, and we have no idea what you're thinking. And you're looking at us, and we have no idea what industry's thinking. And then it gets into this trade between, well, we're thinking about doing this request for proposal. What do you guys want to throw a market study out there? And then there's this huge gap between, well, how are we going to go forward here? And we're trying to guess. And so if we can take out more of the guesswork, we can figure out how to move more quickly. And then using other transactional authorities, mid-tier acquisitions, some of the services are experimenting with even big Cat 1 platforms or Cat 1 programs going OTAs. We figure out how to use that quickly. There's a lot of small business here. figure out how to put capability down, speed up what you're talking about. I think we just need to talk a lot more and a lot earlier about what faces us in that trade space.
Okay. Well, both of you commented that the CNO and the Commandant have to fight the battle between current readiness and future readiness that, of course, are constrained by industrial base and funding. And when it comes to readiness, you either are a producer of readiness and a consumer of readiness. It's a lot more fun to be a consumer, by the way. And, as they're fighting this particular battle, do you think we're on or off glide slope to meet the current and future threats?
Yeah, I mean, I think this gets at, one of the five priorities the Commandant gave to the force, and that's really balancing crisis response with modernization, because crisis response in my mind is current readiness. And there are must-pay bills in readiness that you have to pay if you're going to be a crisis response force. And when you look at the aviation portfolio, that really gets into the flat hour program and all the associated funding streams associated with that. And it was interesting, so I was last back in the Pentagon as the Assistant Deputy Commandant for Aviation from 2017 to 2019, and what we had saw then was a result of decisions that were made earlier that really put us in a readiness trough. And what that was about was underfunding our readiness accounts. And since that time, at that time, we started to put the right resources against that. And from 2017 to today, we've seen an 18% increase in our mission capability rate, which is pretty significant if you track aviation readiness. Now, happy about that, never satisfied, something we have to keep working, but from my perspective, there are must-pay bills that you have to pay every year for your readiness or crisis response. And then that will hold in natural tension with modernization, and you just have to kind of
Fight your way through it.
fight your way through it. Exactly right.
Yes, sir. I'd say we're on glide slope. That's our responsibility. We have to be on glide slope and recognizing there's always a compromise and an exchange between current capability and modernization. I say we're on glide slope. It might not be that we are buying the future systems or capabilities that we would like, but we've made a considerate decision and understand the risk in deferring some of those decisions, especially under tight budget environments like the Fiscal Responsibilities Act in 25. So that calculated understanding allows us to make those investments that DCA talks about, which also have a business case return on the stability and wholeness that they provide for our force structure capabilities. So ideally, we'll figure how we can continue that path for modernization so that we have in terms of development and everything, what we need in the future. And I think we are looking at that correctly as we go forward, especially as we look at the decade of concern and the readiness that's required.
Okay. It's interesting that you'd say that, especially your comments. You looked in hindsight the decisions of your predecessors. And, in your current jobs, you're paying for the sins of your predecessors. And the older you get, sometimes we're the sinners. Okay. For Nasty and Abu, what advances are being made in partnership with the military leadership to ensure that the U.S. has the most capable platforms and systems? You guys lead off.
Okay, I think in a couple areas. One is information sharing. I think that the government's done a lot better job lately of providing info about the threat, and it's all about the threat in the appropriate forms. So we've got common site pictures, common models to address those capability gaps. And then the second area is in digital engineering. So model-based operational analysis of the site picture, both from a blue standpoint and a red standpoint. These systems are so incredibly complex that we're never going to be able to test. And if we just want to know, how does this element or that element, buy its way onto the platform, it's through operational analysis. And so government's got some really good stuff. Industry is really good stuff across the field. And so it's going to take all those together in a common environment to be able to have that level of fidelity and confidence. And that joint simulation environment, for instance, that the Navy's been pioneering at Pax River, that's expanding throughout the DoD, is a great opportunity, not only from a training and an OT standpoint, but eventually for a development standpoint, to know for a different, a capability mix, is it worth the money? Is it worth the effect that you're trying to obtain? You're not going to know with any degree of certainty until you can model it with confidence.
Yeah, I agree with Abu. The move into digital is really opening up a new universe of capabilities. We're getting better at IP sharing, intellectual property sharing, and discussions with the services. And the digital tools are starting to, again, open up this better way to sustain and build airplanes. I use the P-8 example again. So the Boeing P-8 with all our partners, we're building increment 3, block 2 into the P-8s. And so current P-8s coming off of line 3 at Renton are not the same as the P-8s that were initially there. We're upgrading those into greater capability, wideband SATCOM, ability to communicate across the battle space, reach even farther, give the crew on the rails even better capabilities from communications passing data to the point. And then we just invested a little over $400 million in a new facility at the southern part of the JAX, Cecil Field, old Cecil Field. We in the Navy, we sustain F-18s down there. There are big airplanes that are sustained down there. We built a new state-of-the-art facility with partnership with the city. We're moving Navy talent in there. What's really cool is we put a digital backbone into the building. And so we call it Boeing JAX or BJAX. I actually like to call it EJAX. The capability to use digital tools to know exactly what that bureau number is going to look like as flown and as maintained when it comes in. So we can tailor the build to that. We'll know how to build around the new ECP that's going into the airplane. We can also do reach back. And so we're getting better over newer waveforms and newer ways to pass information back and forth that we can start talking to people out on the line, out forward, think contested logistics, the ability to not only know what those bureau numbers are coming in, but also how the force is being maintained out front as well. And so we're building that new capability to do that, continue to invest and continue to lean forward with our service partners. To your point about crisis response, General, I think the thing that industry can do is lean farther forward into sustaining the platforms. So when you look at current readiness, sometimes it's really interesting to look at contracts and be able to look across the table and say, you know, you're actually not incentivizing me to fix that part. You got to incentivize me. And you go, wait a minute, aren't you supposed to do that? And what we spend our money on depends on what's contracted. So we need to find a different way to sustain the parts, to sustain the bureau number, so the FMC rate's going to go up when the balloon kicks up, and it's not just a whole bunch of money into OSD 42 to put into the parts out there. It's figuring out a way to do it digitally, and then also figuring out a way to incentivize industry to continue to do continuous improvement to the things that we're providing to the platforms of both the Navy and the Marine Corps.
I think that digital planning and way ahead is very exciting, specifically as I look to even beyond the development of the platform, but to the O&S aspect. And the importance is to have a government reference architecture that we are not getting hemmed up and hung up on proprietary issues so that we can move forward rapidly in continued spiral development of capability, as well as the testing and simulation aspects that you identified, Abu. That's going to be essential to how we train, how we fight, and how we test in the future.
You know, it's really interesting. We don't have a lot of vertical content in Boeing, so we rely on partners like BAE and Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and stuff. And I will tell you that in the Boeing ecosphere, we value open architecture because it can bring the best of in, right? So we actually can create advantage in my industry world by pushing open architecture so we can minimize the vendor lock that's out there. But to your point about moving faster, I think Bo said it about moving fast, is how are we going to switch things out in 24 hours? You know,
right.
if a threat comes up, how are you going to turn software? How are you going to make sure that your hardware and firmware will be upgradable in the middle of the fight? I think we continue to focus on that piece of it as well.
Yes,
Keep
sir.
going
Yeah.
more and more and more open.
Okay, we have 30 minutes left, so over to the floor. Go to the mic, please. Watch your coffee.
I am Will Brack from the Resolution. I wanted to see how the Navy and Marine Corps are mimicking some of the cybersecurity anomaly detection that the Air Force is doing, once in the buses. Is that something that the Navy and the Marine Corps is taking precedence in doing? Identifying cyber anomalies in play.
Was that geared towards our capability, our platforms, or?
Geared towards
Yeah, I mean, for 24/7, 365, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the threat's real, and we have whole formations that do that for a living, just even within the Marine Corps, within the Joint Force, but of course within the DoD and outside the DoD as well. But I think, yeah, cybersecurity is something we have to think about with everything we do. I think we used to think in terms of close fight, deep fight, rear fight. There is no rear anymore. It's deep, close, deep. And that goes all the way back here. So, I mean, yeah, it's got to be in our thought process 24/7.
Yeah, I would say the same. I mean, the security of our battle space awareness to maintain our decision advantage is what we need to be paying attention to all the time. So I think just as the general outlined it, we are definitely paying attention to that.
Okay, thanks.
Are you guys adopting technologies that are already existing in different DoDs or airfields, such as like the Air Force and Army ecosystems, or are you guys siloed in the Navy and the Marine Corps?
Yeah, I'll talk from a BAE Systems perspective. As a mission systems provider, we work across all the branches of service, and we look to leverage what the DoD's already paid for. Something that might be mature or lower risk. If it works in an airborne Air Force application, it's probably got some applicability to an airborne naval application, and so we'll look to bring the best of breed, both hardware and software, to the fight.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next. Sir. Feel free to queue up behind the mic.
Jim Hoff with the Naval Aviator at the Navy. We talk about the war, the fight, from the front line to all the way back. We talk about some of the new technology we are going to have, like replicators, air, surface, and subsurface. When you look at the diagrams and think about what this picture is, either offshore or for sea valve, how are we thinking about deconflicting what's going on within our own joint and partner services so far, orchestrating this war from primarily offensive or sometimes defense? Is there some thought going into that deconfliction in the battle line?
Yeah, I would say that this is core to the strength of the Carrier Strike Group and our composite warfare command structure, how we train and certify right now under our Carrier Strike Group 4 and Carrier Strike Group 5 in understanding the level of awareness and commander's intent from the operational down to the tactical level of warfare. And the Carrier Strike Group, in its construct, unique in being able to carry out mission command with the battle space awareness that you're talking about because of the technologies that come under joint all-domain capabilities of like overmatch for the Navy, so that we have shared understanding of what's going on, the speed of decision-making that we rely on to move faster and outpace our adversary. We're very, very focused on that and realize that that is going to be a key to success, especially when we're looking at adversaries that have such greater capacity and proximity to their own basing, and we're going to operate in a very distributed, distinct manner. We've got to be very efficient with our fires and our understanding of our maneuver.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's the way we look at it, it's not really deconfliction, it's integration. And, for us as the stand-in force, we have to speak all languages. So we definitely speak Navy, we need to be able to speak Air Force, we need to be able to speak partners and allies. So that obviously is done through a lot of training. There's also some technology that enables that. But the way I look at, C2 and being a contributor to command and control in the joint environment, which we do, it's very feasible that we could be an extension of the JFAC. We can be an extension of the Carrier Strike Group. We can do Sector Air Warfare Commander or Sector Air Defense Commander. We could do Regional Air Defense Commander too. So I think we play a vital role in that, and it's more integration than deconfliction. And it's being able to speak. Yep.
Yeah, we have to be integrated across the joint force. It's how we are developing now, how we are exercising, training, and rehearsing. The challenge, which your question infers, is integrating our allies and then potentially our partners. That's quite frankly the strength in competition and crisis, and also will be an imperative in conflict. So coming from the Pacific most recently, we work very well from a .mil PF approach to that, and now looking more and more at a security and systematic approach as to how we're truly going to be not just interoperable, but integrated to the level of synergy that the general was talking about.
Well, you know, we're all joint warfighters. And we've been joint warfighters for over 30 years now. And we're pretty good at it, and we got to get a lot better at it. But we do it better than anybody else, let's just put it that way. And it's hard work, and they train and certify in that regard. Again, the long pole is bringing our coalition of partners for classification reasons, and all the services are working through that process together to get to the right answer. But we're not there yet, and we need industry's help. Thank you. Next question, please.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Gary Graham with NAFC C-21, LHA, LHG, F-35 integration specifically. I think this question is kind of directed to you, General Gary, and it has to do with as the Marine Corps has been introducing F-35B, the Navy as well on the CBN with the Charlie model, but we've designed ships to have a replacement for AV-8s. The requirement has modified since then, so now we're at the point where, correct me if I'm wrong, now it's 10 aircraft in the new complement. So my question as an NAFC guy is how are we able to integrate a fifth generation fighter on a legacy platform when its requirement is evolving? So I think we're looking at the possibility of having that capability, but yet not being optimized because we haven't upgraded the infrastructure to be able to do that.
I mean, I think it's, you know, the strength of the Marine Expeditionary Unit, which is really the kind of the crown jewel of what we do during campaigning steady state, is our ability to task organize. And we build that MU and we build the aviation combat element that supports that MU based on anticipated mission sets. And there's probably what looks like a standard configuration, which is a configuration we've used for a long time, but we also changed that. So most recently, 13th MU deployed with the full squadron of F-35Bs. 15th is doing the same. That's all on the West Coast. And then you'll see different iterations of how many F-35s go on a MU coming out of, let's just say, out of the 31st MU. And that can always change. There's no hard, fast, set rule. But it brings an incredible capability, and like what the MU has done for us with the ARG, of course, is it's kind of become our Swiss Army knife to respond to anywhere, any type of crisis, anytime. So what that brings to that part of the MU ARG team is that high-end piece. And of course, that's what, like I said, the powers through task organization. So, you know, with amphibs, obviously there was a requirement, just some physical modifications to the ships for the aircraft itself. And then as we start to continue to work on things like kill chains and networks, we can always continue to improve and continue to get better. But we're doing it now. I think we have 6 MU deployments under our belt, maybe with F-35B. And we just FOC'd our 8th fighter squadron on the East Coast, BMFA 542. So we can expect to see them in action when my beloved Harrier sundowns, which will happen. So thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff Runner, and this is Planning and Analysis. My question pertains, I think, to everyone on this stage, so I'm really excited to see all of you here together, both the industry and the Navy and the Marines together. So as we look to the challenge in the Pacific that we're all facing in the future, obviously things are a little different than they used to be before. We look back at the old days where we were using strike top carriers, and we had full air dominance, full sea dominance. It was focused really on kind of the overland and from the sea. So moving forward, the maritime side and the air domain have become a lot more challenging. My question is, what are your collective thoughts on how best to go about this challenge? And specifically, there's kind of 2 categories of how to get at this, right? There's evolutionary change and improvement to make our platforms better. Think of the kind of the unclassed version of what NGen might be, a better air dominance kind of platform. Let's get back to air dominance and then do what we do best. The second is to take on revolutionary ways to get at that. Think
Yeah, well, I will tell you that we look at the Pacific with the reality that it is going to be a joint fight. So as we talked about previously, we're already looking at the reality of joint integration and the simultaneity of effects that's going to be required, not just from the strike group, the integration in the multiple domains to allow the operational maneuver in that complex environment. We're also going to need to establish a pace and tempo of effects that the carrier strike group in itself has a great capability to provide because of its persistence, because of its capacity, because of its sustainability. But we know we're going to have to do that in integration with the joint force. Some of that is just in the decision-making and the command and control process between all of the joint force players that are operating in that area of operations. But for the Navy, it's also not just the myopic view that that is the issue. PRC is unabashedly got global ambitions, and there's going to be issues beyond the specific AOR that might be the direct conflict that the Navy and other carrier strike groups and other integrated naval capabilities are going to have a role to play in dealing with the entire issue at the point.
I think the thing that's really changed or is going to be different is the interrelationship of the all-domain warfare. It took us about a decade or more to build Navy integrated fire control counter-air from the sea and from the air, and connecting what started to be a little bit of a kill web or a kill mesh. We're seeing a lot more now that can be fit into find, fix, target, track, engage, assess, so F2, T2, EA, and a different way to go from the left side of the kill chain once you kick it off to the effects on the right side. But it's so interrelated now that we have to think differently about effects in each domain. But the other big thing is, and I believe watching the Navy and Marine Corps and how industry is bringing stuff, there are people that will hand wave and say, well, you're so reliant on GPS and Link 16 and their radios that, you know, you're going to lose all that, or you're not going to have space. And so you're not going to have that, you're not going to have that. I am absolutely 100% confident that the joint forces fighting through how you go from having everything to just mission orders where a single cockpit or a single bridge or a single combat information center knows exactly what they need to go do. We're going to prevail in any conflict. The United States and its allies will, because we're really, really good at thinking about the hard problem and going to solve the hard problems, and we train to them right now, as you heard already done. But I think everybody has to think about what a future conflict looks like. A lot more in the information space, which requires moving information around at a lot higher rate, a lot lower latency than we have before. So that if you take NIFCA and put it on steroids, that's what you're going to see in all of the kill chains that are out there that make this kill web. And the synergy between, if you just move a piece of information just from the seabed all the way into space and then outside the region, back into the region, the requirements to do all that are immense. I'll also remind everybody that we've been doing this for a long time, and we've been focused on this and practicing. And I tell you, from my experience a few years ago, it was really hard. So anybody that says, oh, the adversary can do all that right now, we should fight to that, yeah, it's really hard. So it's going to be hard for everybody. It's going to be quite the fight when we get out there and do that. I think the nature of the fight has changed. So you have to be able to move information around a lot more to be able to gain the effects you're going to have in any domain.
Yeah, I guess I would add, you asked if we need evolutionary, revolutionary, or disruptive, and I would say yes, absolutely. I think, you know, the Harrier's still around flying, Super Hornet's going to be around for the next couple of decades. New systems take a long time and they cost a lot of money, and so we need to find better ways to make our current systems lethal in the face of a rapidly expanding threat. And in the newer systems, we need to design in flexibility, not only from a software open reference architecture standpoint, but also from a hardware standpoint, or if we want to update processing or apertures, we can do it smartly without breaking the bank. And lastly, and I think this is where a broader group of companies can help industry, is the disruptive piece. You know, whether it's something like Replicator, or where we look at what's going on in Ukraine and some of the lessons that are emerging from there that are changing the face of battle, we can bring different areas to bear, I think, successfully. And that's something that we can explore a little bit better with fleet experimentation and exercises and such, war games, to help inform the trade space.
Thank you. If I may, just one quick follow-on. When we think about disruptive, a lot of times our minds do with small businesses and new companies. I'm curious how we also might be able to start getting some of the primes also engaged in that disruptive fight. What can we do different with requirements? I'm a former staff guy, A-Rock kind of person. What can we do different with the way we're sending our demand signals out? That it's not just small, cheap UASs that are going to change the fight. It's also F-35, it's also NGEN, it's also the carrier itself, like you're saying. What kind of thought have you put into that side of it and how the whole force can be considered a collective disruptive unit?
I think your definition of disruptive is a little narrow. A small UAV is disruptive. I would also tell you that setting up a 21st century digital manufacturing line is disruptive. Investing in facilities that can do advanced manufacturing very, very far from the source of the file. Hundreds of millions of dollars that all of industry is spending in order to do full-size determinate assembly with the way that you manufacture. I'll offer that the big companies are looking at this, that, oftentimes the Boeings and the Lockheeds and the Northrop Grummans get a bad rap, say, hey, you guys aren't agile at all, you're not thinking about this stuff. Well, I tell you what, can't tell you what we're doing, but we're investing billions into St. Louis right now. 4 new facilities are going up. We're not building small UASs. We're building capabilities that go together with our industry partners. We're thinking about things that maybe Bo's folks have provided to the United States Air Force and maybe the Navy would like to have on their platforms, and maybe we can share across. We're thinking about new ways to do materials. We're thinking about new ways to do electronics. We're thinking about new ways to bring effects when a traditional radar dish in the front of a fighter isn't so traditional anymore in the future, and that everything that faces downrange can do a lot of great things. I think that's where a lot of the disruption comes from. And the neat thing is that a large company has a lot of resources to be able to kludge those things together, and working with our service partners, say, hey, what do you think about this thing? It'd be kind of cool to go do that. I'll speak to the Boeing company for just a quick second and tell you that the benefits we have in the commercial world to build things and generate things, actually, we pour it over to the defense side quite a bit. And then we also move things and technology and from the digital space into our Boeing Global Services and then commercial, so we can share across. So I would just offer that when you're thinking about this disruptive kind of thing, don't automatically assume that somebody small is more agile and can be disruptive. We all should think about that. And I'll tell you what, I spend a lot of time thinking about how to disrupt myself. And the business leaders in Boeing right now are thinking about how do we disrupt ourselves, because they know exactly what happens when you don't. And you get too comfortable where you are, whether that's as a company, as a defense industrial base, or as the United States. When we look outward, we got to be disruptive.
Thanks, Nancy. Next.
Yeah, so clearly I'm not soft enough that last leg in the chair to make it wobble enough.
It does rock a little bit.
Carl Ford's Airbus US. I think one thing that's kind of universal, as effectiveness has gone up, a lot of our platforms have become more capable, more exquisite. The sustainability and the suitability often decreases. And a lot of other previous leaders, Afghanistan, Iraq, they're built on Iron Mountain parts. And that's good at DMO and the Navy and DHO Marines and possibly austere bases. And you've got aircraft maybe maintainable in New River or on a ship, with AIMD, maybe less so when you're out in tents in the middle of the Philippines. So what steps are we taking from a platform standpoint, also from an organizational standpoint, to make sure that the right part or right maintainer is there where we need it? A forward area where logistics work may be tested, and we may not be able to stockpile the depth and breadth of parts that we need for these platforms required.
I think for future capabilities, it's ensuring in the capabilities development and the requirements definition that life cycle sustainment is built into that process, so that you have that understanding. And the digital design is key to that and really going to help inform that. Additionally, as we look at the wargaming and the tabletop exercises we do for how we are going to fight, how we expect to fight, and how we might fight, We can't afford to be white carding what we used to in the past in terms of logistics sustainment. We have to understand all the way back through joint and departmental logistics how that's going to be supported in exactly those types of constructs you talked about, distributed, expeditionary locations so that we can sustain. You know, the carrier is very unique in its capacity it has to support that, but we have to have the signal right in the first place, and then the resupply concept's correct.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what you're describing is the wicked hard problem set that we're looking at right now and working on. I think it's a combination of a lot. I think pre-PO, probably some work to be done there, but you can't build a mountain like you're talking about. I think in some cases, just in time, logistics makes sense. I think kind of tapping in from a theater level, an op log level, and a TAC log level, and looking at ways distribution is a way to get after it. And I think another thing too is maybe to challenge the historical way we do things. So if I'm a CDI or a QAR, can I not sign something off virtually where the maintenance is done elsewhere? Maybe you look at our 4790 and the rules and the NAMP and to say these still make sense today based on technology, based on all that, to kind of look at things a little bit different. You know, all source QARs or cross-trained maintainers that can have a smaller footprint in a more austere area that can get the type of maintenance done that needs to be done there, basic servicing, except tires, things like that. We maybe have some stuff pre-PO'd. But that they have knowledge and experience to be able to do other types of maintenance that was traditionally done by a different work center. We're doing a lot of work on learning how to service one another's aircraft between the Naval Force and the Joint Force. So Marine maintainers working on Air Force F-35s, and we're looking to expand the same even with allies and partners. So a little bit of that interchangeability or interoperability. So I think we need to look at all of that because it is a wicked hard problem, particularly when you consider to be living, existing, and fighting inside the WES, which is what our operating construct looks like. So,
You know, and the
That's a
reason
great
it's
question.
wicked hard, we talk about current readiness and future readiness. Well, there's really, people talk about current readiness and recapitalization. Well, it's really three aspects. It's current readiness, it's modernization of the stuff we want to keep, and it's recapitalization of the new stuff. It's easy to design into the new hardware everything that you just talked about, but they're fiscally constrained. So they have to choose how do you modernize what you already own, and how do you keep it relevant to face the threat. And you have to backfit the stuff that you've built and that was designed how many years ago. That's the real crux. The future stuff's easy to design too, until those requirements change, which is what they were talking about, is the absolute necessity to have a current, steady requirement so industry can deliver. Okay, we got time for a couple more.
While you're queuing up to the microphone, I want to underscore what the general said from our perspective, you know, and obviously a business development guy is going to go try to offer a tool to somebody. We're running into old think a lot. And I think inside our services, inside the companies, you know, the people that have done maintenance and sustainment a certain way, the general is highlighting an idea that we have to really, really open up how we do things. And I hope the balloon doesn't go up before we figure out we need to figure out a way to do something different. But I want to underscore that.
You're the optimum height, my friend.
I didn't move down a little
Yeah.
bit. I didn't move it, you might.
You're good, you're good.
Great thing, everybody, learned a lot. We talked about the building flight and the challenges we have. In a lot of ways, folks are familiar, probably nasty the way you would, I'm sure I saw when we first came in the Cold War. I was being testified from the fighting from the sea. The one thing we didn't talk about yesterday, which I think you can elaborate on a little bit, is the thought on the coalition fight. We know the Reds, the Falcons, and they didn't really have a coalition fight, and then they fight themselves to sovereign nation to be able to do that. But also, too, the next fight will probably be a coalition fight. That's certainly the naval component. Thoughts about the challenges there and all the things we talked about.
And it was a coalition fight, right? Basically talking allies and partners, right, sir? Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Before I came to headquarters, I did a quick turn at 1MEF and started to really think about campaigning allies and partners because that was more of my job jar there. And what really opened my eyes up is the importance of allies and partners. And I looked at it, I'll never look at it the same again since that experience. And, you know, when you talk about, a lot of times we'll talk about things like risk to mission, risk to force. Risk to mission is access spacing and overflight, or not having that. And not only the contributions that allies and partners bring in, but just the ability to operate where you think you need to operate, that's really important. And so I think it's important from having a teammate on your left and right in the fight, and also from having the type of access spacing and overflight you need in order to fight the fight you're fighting. So those are my comments, my experience from my time out in Pendleton.
Yeah, obviously the security environment so that we can share the necessary information we need about the battle space awareness and how we are going to conduct the fight is essential. And I mean, we have an adversary that is very, very good at taking whatever we've developed and turning it into their next capability. So until we can figure out our security structure and how we can potentially share some of those tactics and capabilities better, that's going to continue to be a challenge and probably one of the biggest headaches. But the operations that or I should say the exercises and training that we are doing together, I think is essential in developing absolutely in the right direction, especially when you look in the Pacific from where I've operated from. And it's important both for the combat capability it's going to bring as well as the strategic pause it's going to cause in crisis.
You know, as we're wrapping up, I think it's important, first off, when it comes to allies and partners, it is our strategic advantage of our nation, of our allies and our partners. Who's Russia's allies and partner? Who is China's ally and partner? Who is North Korea's ally and partner? Who is Iran's ally and partner? They don't have any except for the four of them. So that's our real strategic advantage, and that's really our threat. And it gives us the physical and political access that we need as we out there, and a lot of industry is taking advantage of that as well. I think as we're getting ready to wrap up, it's also important to remember that, you know, when we want to buy something in the Department of Defense, we paint the enemy 10 feet tall. When we don't want to buy something, we paint ourselves 10 feet tall. And the truth is somewhere in the middle. China's not 10 feet tall, okay? They might be taller than 5'5", but they're not 10 feet tall. And I have every confidence in the world that industry will deliver the capability to the joint force for us to be successful in the deterring conflict, which is cheaper than fighting a conflict, okay? And then if necessary, to fight and win. Ladies and gentlemen, please give our panel a big round of applause. Thank you for being up here.